Hey everybody, last time we left off with the women's rights movement, and we were talking about a key figure known as Betty Friedan. Betty Friedan wrote the book known as The Feminine Mystique, and in that book she says that there's got to be more to life than just being a stay-at-home mom, and she really dives into that idea that a woman needs to go find her place, what makes her happy, and everything else like that. But then later on, she's going to write a book known as The Second Stage. And in this book, she becomes really critical of the movement because she feels like it's becoming very hostile to what she really wanted. She wanted some kind of a balance. And she's seeing that the movement has gone way too far and kind of getting away from what it was to be a woman. And she really believes that a woman needs to be there in the household, some kind of a while being able to maintain some kind of a happiness and, exploring different avenues. All right, so let's talk about some of the feminist victories and defeats. Key component and a big win for them is Title IX. Title IX prohibited any type of discrimination in education and athletics when it came to women. They basically said, look, provide for a male, you have to provide the same thing for females. And this is why we have a baseball team, softball team, and this is why we have males getting the same amount of school materials and females getting the same amount of school materials as well. So that is a good thing. It's a big win, and it was a must needed win. Now, the ERA, or known as the Equal Rights Amendment, is one of those ones where if you're a woman, you might be on one side or the other. So some people are going to consider this a defeat, some will consider a victory. We got a woman known as Phyllis Schlafly. She is an outspoken critic of the ERA. She says that if this law passes and goes into effect, and basically what you're going to do is take away the uniqueness of what it is to become a woman. And she did not want that. She wanted men to hold women to a higher standard or hold them like they're almost, I hate to use the word trophy, but something like that, to kind of go home, take care of them, open the door for them, or, do whatever it took to make these women, feel appreciated. And that's what she wanted. She said there's something special about going on a date. The male pays for it. Underneath the ERA, that might no longer exist. And so it comes up for congressional approval in 1972, and it falls short because three states do not go for it. And so it never happens. And then another controversial court case is going to come about known as Roe versus Wade, and that one is going to be about legalized abortion. It is going to say it can happen. Some people don't like that idea, but then women do have some say so in this because when it comes to abortion, there are cases where it might be needed. We're talking about cases like incest, rape. It might complicate the life of the mother or kill her. And that was a huge argument for that side at that point in time. And today we see women going around saying, it's my body, it's my right. And we may agree on that or disagree on that, but that is a very controversial issue. I'm going to let you make your own mind up on that. Now, this time of change also provided other minorities with a chance to increase their rights. And so let's talk about Latino rights. They again kind of piggyback off of the civil rights movement. And what we're going to see is an increase of immigration after World War II. They're starting to come into the country. We needed them to come here to help us work, fulfill jobs, and they come in willingly thinking that they're going to improve their way of life. They're reaching for the American dream, and that is all promised to them. And underneath the laws of the time, it looked like that was actually going to happen, and they were going to get those equal rights. But we're going to start to see a lot of people start to emerge and say, hey, you know what? We go out there and we bust our tails, and you guys do not pay us fairly. And we're going to see people like Cesar Chavez go out there and use the protest and different things like that to try to get pay better for these immigrant workers that are coming over there, migrant workers working on these farms, doing the hard work. And they're going to form different unions. One of them is known as the United Farm Workers, the UFW, and they will make some gains and some strides. Now, Cesar Chavez's main message is stop treating us like we are these common barnyard animals. Treat us like human beings. Pay us fairly. Make sure that we're well compensated. Make sure that we got good working conditions. Things that a lot of people in America at that time kind of took for granted. And these people were starting to get kind of tired of, you know, doing the hard work and getting very little reward, and rightfully so. And then on top of that, we have the Chicano movement, which pretty much brought an increased awareness of culture in heavily dominated Latino areas. And these Latino areas are saying in school, like, why aren't we learning some of our culture? You know, why do we have to learn about all white people's culture and everything else like that? And they're saying, let's actually have some pride in our Latino culture. And we're going to see them pushing for things like quality of life issues. You know, give us better running water, give us electricity, things that have been going around in the country that haven't quite reached them yet. And we're also going to see them becoming very political. And in a lot of areas, we're going to see that political activism start to branch out and get Latino people elected. Maybe it's at the local level, or maybe they even get into the state level, and sometimes into the national level. That's a good thing. We're getting a lot of different voices into the government. Also, another group of minorities that get involved in this time of crisis is going to be the Native Americans. Native Americans have pretty much have suffered the most out of all the minority groups throughout American history. They used to pretty much control this entire continent, and now they are reduced to less than 1% of our current population here in America today. That is a sad fact. And these guys are trying to go out there and trying to right the wrongs which fell on them. And so we're going to have the American Indian Movement, which is known as AIM, and they are going to focus on civil rights issues, trying to make sure that they are treated, as Native Americans. A lot of times back in those times, that you were either considered white or colored. And they're like, look, we want to be identified as Native Americans or American Indians. They're also going to try to go out there and secure land. And a lot of this land may have been taken away from them illegally, and they're trying to get it back. They're also trying to make sure they get their legal rights, and they want self government, particularly on the reservations. Now, Native Americans become more militant, and we have two different examples of them becoming militant. One is in Alcatraz, which is a prison over there in San Francisco. It's on an island all by itself. And they basically go over there and they take it over and say, look, this used to be our land. You gave it to us even after you took it from us in a treaty, and now you're not upholding that treaty. They will hold that Alcatraz prison all the way until 1971. And then we're going to have Native Americans try to take over Wounded Knee. Wounded Knee, as we recall, was a very bad battle in which a lot of Native Americans, children, women, everything like that, were killed for no reason than other a misfire on a gun that shouldn't have went off. And the land should have never been taken away from them anyways, because they were trying to force them on the reservation, changing their entire lives, getting them away from becoming nomadic hunters with the buffaloes and things like that. And now these Native Americans will come to Wounded Knee. They'll hold Wounded Knee. A lot of people will actually be involved in some gunfights. And Native Americans are going to only back down when the government promises to go back, look at some of those treaties, try to say, okay, maybe we can change some things. Overall, the Indian Self-Determination Act will happen in 1975. That will give them a lot more control in how they control these resources on their reservations, how they conduct laws, different things like that. Once you go onto a reservation, laws kind of change. We see, for example, a lot of Indian casinos and things like that. And they can do this because they now have more control. Before the act in 1975, that was kind of hard to do for them. All right, so let's talk about the rights of consumers and disabled. Now, rights of consumers wasn't really a big thing brought up until Ralph Nader titled Unsafe Any Speed. And he's showing that car companies don't care about the consumer. They'll go out there and they'll go ahead and produce a car that they know is probably going to kill you if you ever get into any type of wreck. And so cars are now going to be manufactured with safety in mind, not just cars, but everything else. They're not going to produce things that are going to maybe possibly kill you. Now the consumers have a voice, and now the consumer's safety is in mind. And so that's a good thing. One example is a lot of cars before the 1970s, when he wrote this book, didn't even have seatbelts. Seatbelts save a lot of lives. I never really liked wearing one until, you know, I got to the age of maybe 25 or so. Always thought of it. Look, it's not going to save my life until I actually got in a wreck where I was wearing the seatbelt and it saved my life. So, first thing I do when I get in the vehicle, buckle up. After that, we're also going to have OSHA come about, which is Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They are going to ensure that laws are going to be created that are going to make workplaces safe. And so by doing this, you go to work and it's an unsafe place, OSHA will step in and make sure that you're not going back to work until that issue is pretty much fixed. And we're also going to see disabled people. Disabled people before this whole movement were kind of looked at in a way where they are kind of like second tier citizens or there's something wrong with them. Now that's going to change. We're going to see things like Special Olympics come out. We're going to see better treatment of them. We're going to see opportunity for them to actually advance in society where they're not treated that bad anymore, where people are actually trying to help these people in their disability instead of making fun of them because of their disability. And the last movement we need to talk about is the environmental movement. Now, the EPA comes underneath Nixon. Nixon got a hold of a book known as Silent Spring, written by Rachel Carson, and she conducts an experiment about how this spring used to be a nice, great thing when she was a child. Now it's all toxic because of the environmental changes around it. And so the EPA comes in and says, look, we're going to pass certain laws to make sure the environment is clean. We're going to see things like Earth Day being created. We're also going to see Clean Air Acts where they limit the amount of smog in an area. We're going to see Clean Water Act where they make sure that the water is actually drinkable. When you get into it, it's safe. We are still experiencing some problems in Flint, Michigan today with the Clean Water Act. We're also going to see the Endangered Species Act. If we start to notice that certain animals are on the decline, we're going to make sure that those animals cannot be hunted and killed. And then, of course, the big one is going to be in the 1980s, and this is all about the nuclear energy debate. A lot of people are debating, is nuclear energy a good thing? We had also seen another place known as Chernobyl in the Soviet Union. It had a nuclear meltdown, and that place is still unlivable today. And then we nearly had one of our own in 3 Mile Island. Luckily, it did not go through. That plant never collapsed, never had some kind of a nuclear meltdown. And that debate is still running today. A lot of these nuclear plants around the world, particularly in our country, they're still trying to figure out what they're going to do. All right, so that was the end of this short chapter. I will post a test on this very shortly. If you need anything, let me know. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, stay safe. Go outside. Get in the sun. They're saying this stuff is being killed by the sun. So go out there and get your vitamin D. Take care. I love you. Bye.